Natalie Portman's bold choices have been wowing audiences since the age of 13.
The praise for her work in that movie is unprecedented.
She remains unpredictable.
They said, "Would you like to model?" And she looked them straight in the eye and she said, "No, I would like to act."
Uncompromising.
She was ready to throw away Star Wars to do a Broadway stage version of The Diary of Anne Frank.
And undaunted.
She's in it for the art. She believed in the project enough to suffer through it.
She's had one of the most dynamic and interesting careers in recent memory. And she's done it on her own terms. By 2008, 28-year-old Natalie Portman was one of Hollywood's hottest stars. But she was about to make a more demanding commitment to a film than she had ever made before. A year of training for the indie film, Black Swan.
For a year, she did 8 hours a day of ballet training and transformed her body, her soul, her spirit into another human being.
She gave this ferocious kind of dedication to a role that she knew was one of the great roles that she was going to have in a long time. You know the way you would say a hungry beast devours the carcass, won't leave a scrap on the bone? That's the way she felt about that character.
Preparation for this character would demand an arduous physical transformation.
She definitely brought herself to a ballerina size, which is almost like frighteningly small.
Your muscles can only take so much, so just having to keep our bodies warm in a cold environment, keep our ankles warm, our feet warm with our pointe shoes.
She's in it for the art. She believed in the project enough to suffer through it.
Her fierce dedication came at a cost.
A mini concussion from the fight scene where she had to go to the hospital and get a CAT scan, and I know that one of her ribs did go beneath another one, so she dislocated it, and she was in a lot of pain. And she had to do it take after take after take.
Eventually, though, something had to give.
There was one scene where I know that she kind of broke down, and she was crying, and she and Darren exchanged words. She learned that we didn't even have a medic on set because we couldn't even afford it. And she was like, "You don't even have a medic on set? Like, I don't even think that that's legal." So she said, "Take away my trailer before you take away a medic." The next day, her trailer was gone.
Despite her injuries and on-set challenges, the actress persevered. Hard work and determination are nothing new to Natalie. She was born into a family that overcame tremendous odds.
My grandfather's little brother and his parents were both killed were all killed in concentration camps, and most of my extended family was killed in the Holocaust.
Natalie's grandparents fled to Palestine.
Natalie's grandparents encouraged their son, Avner, to attend medical school, and so they were very high-achieving.
Avner Hirschlag traveled to Ohio State University to finish some electives for medical school. And there, he met Natalie's mother, Shelley. Natalie was born June 9th, 1981, in Jerusalem.
They had to use forceps during the delivery. She had a cone head when she emerged, and her grandmother referred to her as Conehead for quite some time after that.
In 1984, when Natalie was 3, Avner accepted a medical residency in the United States.
When Natalie's parents decided to leave Israel, they moved to Maryland so that he could study at George Washington University.
The family moved to Long Island, where Avner opened a medical practice.
He taught her about his work, he taught her about science, and he taught her how to relate to other people.
Natalie's mother encouraged her to embrace the arts and signed her up at the American Theater Dance Workshop.
They brought Natalie to us, and she was absolutely adorable. Little tiny 8-year-old with long, curly, light brown hair, beautiful child. She took ballet and Broadway theater dance, and she was good at it all. She was very mature for an 8-year-old. You could speak to her as if she were older. She had a great sense of humor, that adorable little giggle. There's that certain special something that you might not even be able to put your finger on, but Natalie definitely had that.
One day after ballet, Natalie caught the attention of a talent scout.
I was in a pizza parlor after dance class one day, and a man was in there.
The story goes that they came up to her and they said, "Would you like to model?" And she looked them straight in the eye and she said, "No, I would like to act."
I told them I didn't want to model, I wanted to act. And I found it boring, and I always need to be like stimulated. You know, I always need to be doing something that makes me think, and it didn't make me think.
Her mom found her an agent.
Natalie said that first she would go on commercial auditions and she just wasn't smiley enough and she couldn't stand the commercial auditions. But eventually she got a manager.
Her first professional job was as an understudy in the off-Broadway show Ruthless.
Natalie worked alongside child star Laura Bundy and a then unknown Britney Spears.
Shelley came into the office and she was very excited. She said that Natalie was testing for a role in a movie with a very famous French director.
The audition would change Natalie's life forever.
I read this intense script that was going to require a young girl to do some pretty incredible things. So I was very concerned about finding a little girl whose parents would let her do it.
By 1994, 12-year-old Natalie Portman had just completed a stint off-Broadway and was about to audition for her first film.
I'm Natalie Hirschlag, and I was born June 9th, 1981.
I was presented with the task of finding an adolescent girl who could smoke, curse, and think she was in love with a 40-year-old man. Imagine that. It was pretty intense.
French filmmaker Luc Besson was set to shoot Leon, the Professional, a film about an assassin who rescues an orphaned girl from being murdered.
When Natalie came to audition, I walked out of my office into my reception area and I saw a little girl buried in a book. There was no hairbrushes, there were no bows or clips or primping. When Natalie came in and sat down, it was like sitting across from a contemporary. She spoke like an adult, and the intelligence behind her eyes was just so clear. I just didn't think it was going to work out because she was so young. So I said, thank you, but this is not going to work.
200 other girls would audition for the part of Matilda, but Besson was unimpressed.
I got this overseas phone call, and he was very upset because all the girls that I sent him were 14, 15, 16 years old. And he said, I need the girl who thinks she knows sex, not the girl who knows sex.
Natalie got a call back.
What's your name?
Matilda. What about you?
Leon.
Cute name. Leon. My kid brother. I'm sure they killed him. 4 years old, never did anything. So beautiful.
Luke said to Natalie, I want you to imagine you see your whole family is shot. Your father is dead. Your baby brother is also under the bed, dead. And Natalie just started weeping. Weeping, uncontrollably weeping.
I was more of a mother to him than that damn pig ever was.
Hey! In retrospect, I realized that Natalie, coming from a completely happy home, nuclear family, no siblings, was still able to imagine this horrific situation and react to it, truthfully. And none of the other actors that auditioned for that part during that process came close to that. It was a no-brainer.
Natalie landed the gritty role. The script walked a fine line.
When it started to become clear that Luc Besson wanted Natalie above all others, Avner Herschlag really started to pick apart the script, page by page.
My parents were like, there is no way you're doing this movie. This is absolutely inappropriate for a child your age to be doing this film. And I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever read. You're gonna ruin my life. And was basically just fighting with them so much. One of the things my parents were particularly concerned about was the smoking.
The character of Matilda smoked cigarettes, and her dad said, that's out. That's not out. She must. And he said, well, then Natalie's out. So Luke said, okay, maybe she can smoke in the beginning and Leon can make her stop. And so he said, okay.
The sexual overtones of the film, things that my parents tried to scale down.
The professional has a very unsavory undercurrent. He is sort of taken this 45-year-old killer with this young girl. So it's a very edgy, tricky kind of thing. But there Natalie was with this wonderful opportunity that would lead the way to what she would do with the career that she was going to have.
With the role came a warning from the film's casting director.
I said, two things are gonna happen if you let Natalie do this. One, she's going to become an international star. And two, she's going to become the object of a lot of weirdos' affection. And this is something you're going to have to contend with for her entire childhood.
To protect her privacy, Natalie adopted a stage name. Natalie Herschlag was now Natalie Portman.
Portman is the maiden name of her grandmother, so she achieves her goal of maintaining a small degree of privacy and insulation from the public eye.
When The Professional opened, Natalie's provocative performance stole the show.
At the premiere, a renowned actor that I was familiar with came up to me and said, the thoughts that I am thinking right now are making me feel queasy, and I am sure I am not the only man in this room who has those same thoughts.
She impressed people as is what an extraordinarily beautiful child we have here, who has obviously this grace, this built-in elegance, and this maturity beyond her years.
She was just a natural. I mean, when she stood at that door and knocked on that door and the tears were rolling down her eyes, she was just wonderful.
The praise for her work in that movie is unprecedented.
On the heels of her debut performance, Hollywood was hooked, and filmmakers lined up to work with the young actress. Natalie Portman's performance in Leon, The Professional, established her as a serious actor at the tender age of 12.
When you have a child making a big splash in a movie, you never know if they're ever going to play another lead again, much less continue acting.
After a successful Hollywood debut, she attended a prestigious acting camp for teens.
Natalie Portman was one of the students at Stage Door Manor, and when she joined us, she was still very young. She was 14, 15. She was already very established in the film industry. Natalie's first role at Stage Door was Sally Bowles in Cabaret. What was remarkable about her taking on that role was that it is a role that was far beyond her years. She looked like a little girl at that point. I remember very distinctly sitting in the grass, and we're talking about the song Cabaret and the fact that this woman had to have an abortion in order to live the life that she's going to live. So it's quite heavy material for anyone, never mind a girl of 15 years old. To this day, it sent a shiver up my back watching this girl walk on that stage and sing that song. You thought, I'm seeing something special. I'm seeing something unique, a gift that this girl has that she's sharing with people.
After a small role alongside Al Pacino in Heat, Natalie took a role in Beautiful Girls.
In Beautiful Girls in 1996, Portman stole the movie from a very eminent cast, including Timothy Hutton and Uma Thurman.
In the role of Marty, Natalie found herself in familiar territory.
What's your name?
Marty.
As in Martha?
As in Marty. Name for a grandfather I never even knew, Martin. So now I'm Marty. Just Marty, a girl named Marty. It is, I think, the bane of my existence.
In Beautiful Girls, Natalie Portman is being pursued in a way by her next-door neighbor, played by Timothy Hutton. And there was an age gap there, just as there was in her debut film.
Even though that she's always walking this fine line and her sexuality, it's always on her own terms.
When you see that sense of being able to speak to each other as equals, very difficult to do with a 15-year-old girl and not come across as creepy.
Wait?
Yep. Wait, 5 years. I'll be 18. We can walk through this world together.
In October of 1997, it was Broadway that offered Natalie her first lead in The Diary of Anne Frank, a part she dreamed of playing since childhood.
Natalie was offered the role in Horse Whisperer by Robert Redford, but Natalie turned it down to do The Diary of Anne Frank on Broadway. Even at that young age, as a young Jewish girl, it was really like, what speaks to me? What's important to me? What do I believe in? She wanted to be the mouthpiece for this girl whose life was taken away.
But a more difficult decision was on the horizon. George Lucas had announced plans to finally film the highly anticipated prequels to his Star Wars trilogy.
Everybody went crazy when George Lucas said he was going to be doing this prequel trilogy. The first 3 films had been enormously successful. You can't even put a number on them, really, how successful they had been and how passionate the fans were.
The movies grossed over $1.7 billion worldwide. All eyes were on Lucas when it came to casting the new trilogy.
Not since Gone with the Wind was there such a buzz in Hollywood as there was when George Lucas was looking for a queen for the return of Star Wars.
The female lead of The Phantom Menace was 14-year-old Queen Padme Amidala, who needed to be believable as the ruler of a planet and at the same time vulnerable.
Lucas's queen needed to have a little something that Princess Leia didn't. Gravitas. Leia was kind of a bratty teenage girl to start with. He needed a teenage girl who was the opposite, regal.
Every young actor and actress wanted to be a part of this prequel trilogy. It could totally catapult an actor's career to a new level. When Natalie Portman auditioned, they auditioned about 200 other young actresses, and they settled on Natalie. The casting director said she had the inner and outer intelligence and beauty that was required for the role.
Natalie was offered the role, but the production schedule conflicted with rehearsals for Anne Frank.
It was a huge commitment to make at 14 to sign on for basically 10 more years of my life.
A lot of people in Hollywood were amazed when Natalie Portman turned down Robert Redford, who wanted her to do The Horse Whisperer, because she wanted to do Anne Frank on Broadway. But they were really shocked when she apparently was willing to turn down George Lucas and the Star Wars trilogy to play Anne Frank on Broadway.
In 1996, 14-year-old Natalie Portman was set to play her dream role of Anne Frank on Broadway. The rehearsals would conflict with another offer, the coveted part of Queen Amidala in the Star Wars prequels.
It's something she felt so personally for. She was ready to throw away Star Wars to do a Broadway stage version of The Diary of Anne Frank.
The only way to get Natalie on board was to accommodate her schedule. Lucasfilms moved up the production of The Phantom Menace so that it did not overlap with her Anne Frank rehearsals.
She has admitted that before she was cast, she didn't know the difference between Star Wars and Star Trek.
Any young actress with half a brain wanted that role, but I don't think any of them had more brains than Natalie Portman. And it's partly because she was more interested in being smart than being a movie star. She didn't know the difference between Star Trek and Star Wars, but she did know the difference between Ernest Hemingway and William Faulkner.
I really figured that I'd have a great time doing They're so much fun, and people really love them, and it's nice to do something that becomes part of the culture.
Natalie spent the summer in London and Tunisia, shooting Star Wars Episode I, The Phantom Menace.
The biggest challenges for The Phantom Menace were the location work in Tunisia in the month of August. We got off the plane, and it was like 125 degrees. You could see all the actors start to go pale. And Natalie's thinking, oh my God, that big heavy costume I've got to wear. It was insane. And to make matters worse, she actually sprained her ankle. You initially think, oh, we're going to have to shoot tighter. You know, we're going to have to shoot with the double. But, you know, little ninja Natalie was, you know, soldiering on. But Natalie says, no, I can do this, you know. She'd walk across the set, and then there'd be a set of crutches at this back end of the tape. No, she just powered through.
After wrapping The Phantom Menace, she went back to high school and started rehearsals for Anne Frank on Broadway.
She was so fast to synthesize what she learned, and she sort of learned very quickly how to size it up for the theater.
Not even a little peek, Mrs. Van Dam.
Natalie had just turned 16. She was a true academic, and at the time was taking a load of AP classes. And she was the star of the show. She was like the name above the marquee for the Broadway show. So it was a lot for 16-year-old shoulders.
Every day after fourth period, I would see Natalie get into a town car, and we knew she was heading to Broadway.
In her dressing room, there were all these chemistry books and things. She was studying whenever she could.
She had like a whole litany of classes that she was involved in, and then she had the Broadway show.
The play took its toll on Natalie emotionally.
Yes, Mother, no, Mother, anything you say, Mother.
To take something that was so personal as Anne Frank and to have the history that her family had with the Nazi camps, it's the fact that she's able to draw on that. I think that can be very difficult.
Some nights I remember Natalie really struggled with that, and it was hard to shake.
Natalie played Anne in 200 performances before the show closed. In May of 1999, Star Wars Episode I, The Phantom Menace, opened.
It was pandemonium. Fans were camping out days before the release of the movie.
The worldwide fan base was like a pack of hyenas starving for years.
It really put Natalie Portman on the map. This role really took her to a whole new level, and it really made her a household name.
Star Wars transformed Portman from a child star turned promising young actress into an icon.
But the burgeoning star had other priorities.
Natalie did not attend the Star Wars premiere because she was taking her final, and that was important to her. That was her priority, was school.
How many teenagers would skip the premiere of Star Wars, especially if they were starring in it? It speaks volumes to her ambition and her seriousness, and ultimately to her success as an actress.
In June of 1999, Natalie Portman's high school graduation ceremony was sold out.
When she did walk across the stage, the room lit up with the flashes.
Complete strangers bought tickets to watch Queen Amidala receiving her diploma.
I remember when we were backstage, she felt badly about the fact that people were focusing a lot of attention on her. She wanted to be seen as someone who was average.
But Natalie was far from average. She graduated with a GPA of 4.0, and in the fall, she was accepted to Harvard.
What I witnessed most about Natalie, because I went to go stay with her for a few weeks, was I feel like Harvard was the first time that Natalie really met a whole group of like-minded people.
I'm able to conduct a completely normal college life right now, and I feel really privileged to be able to have these kind of two separate lives.
She was everything that a Harvard student should be. She was a leader. She thought for herself. She was appropriately assertive. Natalie was a psychology concentrator, so that's what they call majors at Harvard. So when I think about why Natalie was interested in psychology, my sense is she's really interested in people. She's interested in what makes people tick. She's actually interested in people not just as individuals, but how people interact at every level, including whole cultures. Natalie is in a rare position in that she is capable of making a huge impact on the world, and I think her studies of psychology will only help her to do that.
The most sparkling example of Natalie's commitment to her academics would be the fact that she went to college and never left.
Natalie would shoot Star Wars Episodes 2 and 3 during breaks from school. The trilogy would go on to bank over $2 billion worldwide.
So, Attack of the Clones, we're now down in Australia. Natalie's now 3 years older, much more mature. She's at Harvard. I just noticed the biggest change was complete dedication. Every Saturday morning, she would walk through the sets with George, blocking all of the scenes, talk more about the detail of the script, the depth of the character. You know, she was really into her craft.
I think it's fair to say that Natalie Portman had the best summer job of any student at Harvard. What it did for her as an actress was to give her extreme exposure so nobody would forget her when she went to college, which is the nightmare of every actress who faces that choice.
It was a brilliant move on her part, and it kept her in the mix.
Her summer breaks weren't just spent working on Star Wars.
Mike Nichols saw The Diary of Anne Frank on Broadway, and he was entranced by her.
Impressed by her work on stage, Nichols cast Natalie in The Seagull.
He cast her alongside Meryl Streep and Philip Seymour Hoffman, and that is pretty heavy company for somebody who's not 21 years old.
On August 12, 2001, the play opened at the Delacorte Theater in Central Park.
I remember her saying to me that she had gotten some bad reviews, and she wasn't accustomed to getting bad reviews.
The critics were totally divided on her.
She told me that Meryl, pulled her aside and said, "You're great, don't worry about that, let that go." And that was really important for her to hear that.
In the spring of 2003, Natalie graduated from Harvard.
I don't think she was thinking in the back of her mind, well, I'll do this and then get on with the rest of my life. I think she was open. I think she was exploring what kinds of things might be possible for her.
Her education helped fire a sense of political and social awareness.
She's very interested and committed to the Middle East, trying to do what she can to try to make the situation better there. I think her interest in psychology may have fed into those broader interests.
She's never been shy about getting involved and taking a stand in public issues.
She's also very interested in third country women getting donations so that they could help themselves.
Inspired to take action, she became a spokesperson for a nonprofit microfinance organization.
Hi, I'm Natalie Portman, Ambassador of Hope for Finca. For a quarter century, Finca has been providing a hand up, not a handout, to the world's poor, mostly women. One of the best ways to ensure a brighter future for a child living in extreme poverty in the developing world is to provide that child's mother with the financial tools she needs to become economically self-sufficient.
Microfinance as a whole has been really a compelling way for people, especially women who are in poverty, to move out of poverty. And you just see sort of a whole situation being able to change because of one simple idea, which is that the poor should have access to banks and banking services. I guess it's made me try and figure out what I might be able to do to help in whatever way I can, and to try and support institutions that are trying to improve the world. And I guess that's a very large statement.
She's aware of a lot more than just what's on the page. It absolutely makes you a stronger actress to have other interests and to have other passions and to be informed and globally aware of what's happening.
With this newfound passion, Natalie was about to take on more challenging roles. In the spring of 2003, Natalie had just graduated from Harvard with a degree in psychology.
Perhaps being at Harvard sort of quelled the fires a bit because her focus was on academics.
I always wondered, is she going to really chuck this whole thing when she graduates from Harvard and go on to medical school?
Those were serious things for her to ponder at that time. If she was going to be a serious actress, she had to do what other serious actresses had to do.
Natalie reconnected with director Mike Nichols.
I think Mike Nichols lit the fire under Natalie. He came in and was like, this is what you should be doing. And he became a huge proponent. He became like her coach.
Mike Nichols is somebody who knows talent. He made Robert Redford a star in the 60s with Barefoot in the Park on Broadway. He is known as an actor's director. The Graduate made Dustin Hoffman a star.
Mike Nichols would say to Natalie, what agent are you with and what kind of projects are you reading, and you should be getting in for this and you should be reading for this.
Mike Nichols had another project in mind as well, one of his own, the part of a mysterious stripper in Closer, a dark and unsentimental film about 4 people and their interweaving sexual relationships.
So we were looking for something to work on together again, and he sent this to me and said, you know, what do you think of this? And I was like, great.
Mike Nichols says, Natalie, you're going to play the other female lead in Closer, and you're not only going to be playing this young, free-spirited woman, but you're going to be doing a strip scene. I'm sure it was one of the most intimidating prospects Natalie Portman has ever faced professionally.
When I read the script for the first time, it absolutely scared me because she's really complicated. All of the characters are really complicated. So I was so scared. I was like, I have to do this because I don't know if I can.
Closer would be Natalie's most adult role to date.
There's a famous saying in Hollywood, cute doesn't age well. At one point, you've got to make the transition to becoming an adult. And you can't do that if you're going to still sound like a 16-year-old teenager.
Closer for Natalie was woman and girl. I don't think she was woman yet.
Mike Nichols suggested that she go and work with a vocal coach to get a lower register for it. And I think largely it succeeded.
Natalie embraced the challenging role. Released in December of 2004, Closer garnered Natalie her first Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress, as well as an Oscar nomination. After the release of Revenge of the Sith in 2005, Natalie had her choice of roles.
Star Wars let her alternate blockbusters with art films with a freedom that very few actors have. Being the queen of a $2.4 billion George Lucas empire gave Portman a lot of cards to play, and she played them very well.
Whether she was starring in a low-budget indie or a big-budget studio picture, Natalie gave it her all. From learning piano to horseback riding, even shaving her head. There seemed to be few lengths she would not go to for a role. Little did she know, a challenge on the horizon would trump them all.
Natalie is her best when she has a sense inside of her that she has to prove something. That's so important for an artist to stay not only relevant, but to be great.
In 2007, acclaimed director Darren Aronofsky began making plans to shoot a film about a talented but unstable ballerina cast in Swan Lake.
I went to see Swan Lake for the first time, the ballet, and I saw that there was a black swan and a white swan played by the same dancer. And kind of it was a eureka moment. This one dancer was telling me how the Swan Queen is a half swan, half human creature, and this idea of a were-swan went off in my head.
It was a ballet horror film. It's not the most marketable idea for a film.
Aronofsky had only one person in mind for Nina, the tormented ballerina struggling to hold on to her sanity.
The first time I met Natalie Portman was probably, I don't know, something like 10 years ago.
This movie was very much a meeting of minds between Natalie and Darren. It was kind of stewing within each of them.
We had a coffee in Times Square, and there was a lot of ideas. I knew I wanted to do something in the ballet world.
It was in the ballet world, which is a world I was really interested in. But the fact that the character is sort of dealing with her own identity and her identity as an artist was obviously really interesting as an artist to sort of think about and explore.
Nobody thought Black Swan had box office smash written all over it, even the people who made it. They were scared going into it, and a lot of what made it happen was Portman's dedication.
But before filming would begin, Natalie would have to dedicate a year in training to become Nina.
A fledgling ballerina might get her big break at 19, 20, or 21. So when Natalie Portman took this role at 29, right there, it was at the outer limits of what would be acceptable for her to do this.
Ballet is one of the, if not the hardest art form, and you can't fake it.
Darren, he was asking her, do you think you're going to be able to dance and act at the same time? And I remember her saying, no, I can't at this point.
In late 2008, Natalie began training for the toughest role of her career as a talented but unstable ballerina in the film Black Swan.
She realized that in order to portray a ballet dancer legitimately, she was going to have a certain body type. Ballet particularly requires girls to be thin.
I started training for the film a year before shooting began, and we worked out like 5 hours a day, doing about 3 hours of ballet. We would swim a mile and then we'd tone.
She was working to get her arms very toned, just doing free weights. She was doing a lot of gyrotonics. She was doing everything she could to get the body of a ballet dancer.
I really didn't know if she could pull off the ballet. I was getting nervous because she was improving, but she was really far away.
Natalie's training intensified when she began working with choreographer Benjamin Millepied.
He was brought in as a technical advisor. He ended up playing a small part in the movie as her dance partner.
She was on a very strict schedule. She would coach with myself and Georgina Parkinson and Benjamin when he was in town, and we'd work on the actual choreography sequences.
Natalie would ultimately lose 20 pounds in preparation for the role.
She definitely brought herself to a ballerina size, which is almost like frighteningly small.
She changed her whole body, and she had to because she's short, and dancers are supposed to be long and narrow. And to transform herself into that, she underwent a sculpting process, almost like in the opposite direction, Robert De Niro in Raging Bull.
It was amazing the 2 months prior to filming how much her body changed. By the time we started filming, she looked like a professional dancer.
Something clicked for her and she suddenly started to capture the grace of it. And I think it was just she really amped up the training. I mean, she worked really, really, really hard.
Natalie's dedication would be tested to its limits when filming commenced in December of 2009.
When we started filming Black Swan in Purchase, New York, it was the dead of winter, ultra cold, unheated, uninsulated. There were some heaters that people would set up, but those would have to get shut off once filming started just because of the sound.
Your muscles can only take so much, so just having to keep our bodies warm in a cold environment. You know, we're not dressed, we're in ballet suits.
You can't dance on a full stomach, and there wasn't even time to eat a lot of these days. You know, it was just hammering out probably 6 or 7 scenes on any given day.
And then there were injuries.
I dislocated a rib. One of my ribs went under another rib while I was being lifted at one point. So that was tough because sort of from the middle of the film on, I couldn't really take a deep breath.
She was in a lot of pain. Even dancing by herself, she was in pain because her diaphragm would be, you know, kind of in spasm. Once we got to some of the partnering things, luckily Benjamin was able to kind of shift around some of the grips. So instead of being around her back, which would have pushed right on that rib, he made certain things under her armpits.
The two formed a bond.
I could sense a flirtation budding between Benjamin and Natalie at the start of filming. Darren very much wanted no romance on set just because he knew that what a feat this was going to be to get the movie made anyway, and he didn't want to pull anyone's attention one way or the other.
Natalie had to juggle the physical demands of playing a ballerina while performing the complex character that was Nina.
She had to wear these very uncomfortable contacts, and she had no peripheral vision. She looked blind to me, and it was a little scary because it's not something that you can fake doing that choreography.
I remember just how raw it was. and how emotionally disturbing it was. Beautiful, all at the same time. Truly amazing moment to see her literally turn from the white swan to the black swan.
Watching the monitor with Darren and Benjamin Millepied, and when she finally did it and she had this whole different persona than we had seen prior to that, we like started laughing and clapping our hands like it was brilliant.
In December 2010, Natalie's hard work had paid off. Black Swan opened to rave reviews.
I was amazed, astounded. I walked out of the theater shuddering. The performance was so powerful.
Her performance was lauded by critics as a career high.
It was like a realized potential, and I think that's really important as an artist to prove that to yourself.
I don't know if it was luck or her instinct or whatever that decided that this little film is worth this level of commitment. But that was by no means a script that had blockbuster written all over it.
It's just the biggest dream to have a film that people respond to. And that's been our experience with it, that people are just leave completely thrilled by the film. And that's like the most you can ask for.
For Black Swan, Natalie was awarded with acting's highest honor, an Academy Award.
It feels very, very dreamlike right now. I don't really know where I am, I suppose.
I was so thrilled for her. It's what every actress dreams of.
Natalie Portman won not only the Academy Award, I think the British Award, the Golden Globe Award. How many did Natalie Portman not win that year would be the real question.
But the rewards for Black Swan were not only career-changing, but life-changing.
Benjamin Millepied, who also partnered me in the film, and now partners me in life.
Natalie's romance with Benjamin Millepied blossomed. They announced their engagement, and on June 14, 2011, Natalie gave birth to a son, Olive.
She met her soulmate, and she had her first baby. That's way more important than any Academy Award.
Benjamin's an amazing artist, and he's so likable and charismatic and a smart guy, so I think that they're a fantastic couple. They complete each other in very complementary ways, though they're not both dancers or both actors. I think that's a strong point to their relationship.
Natalie Portman has grown up in front of audiences, transforming from doe-eyed child to movie star, Harvard graduate to Swan Queen. Even off-screen, she keeps audiences guessing.
There's a great deal of uncertainty about what lies in the future for Natalie Portman. Whatever she chooses, whether it's a return to the screen, whether it's spending time with her family, or diving headfirst into her humanitarian work, it's going to be something she believes in.
Given the talent, skills, and knowledge that Natalie has, I'll be really surprised if she doesn't emerge as a leader in the society and culture more generally.
It's not another Hollywood starlet. This is somebody that is special. This is somebody that is an actor at the core of what that means. I don't think Natalie went out to try to become famous. I think Natalie went out to become a wonderful actor, and she did.
One of the most exciting things is that I just am accepting complete unknown, which is what all of us live every day.
I think she's at a place in her life where she listens to her soul. And whatever that is, I believe it will be extraordinary.